That look in the mirror didn't lie. 32 years old. Toned body. And a seemingly perfect life in San Francisco. Jake Cooper. Respected personal trainer. Always in control, at least that's how everyone saw me. But behind the smiles and guidance to customers, he carried the weight of a hurt heart. Since Boston, 8 months have passed since I left everything behind. Diving headfirst into work, turning the gym into my refuge. The pain of the end still echoed. But I preferred to focus on the repetitions and sets. It was safer that way. Easier. Until that day my shoulder decided to change everything. If you have already allowed yourself to be surprised by fate, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. The premium gym in the Bay Area was my territory. From the top of the 10th floor, San Francisco stretched out through the ceiling to floor windows. A view that made my clients gasp between sets. The aroma of sweat mixed with the metallic smell of the equipment was already a part of me. From 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., my life consisted of counting repetitions, posture adjustments, and calculated incentives. Weights became my mother tongue, and every sore muscle was welcome. Between one client and another, I watched the bay alone with my thoughts, convinced that this routine was enough. I was demonstrating an incline bench press when I felt that sharp twinge in my shoulder. The weight almost collapsed, but my pride held it tight. I tried to hide it, but Maya, my most observant client, didn't let it go. After 3 days of ignoring the pain, she practically dragged me to the medical clinic. The waiting room was like all the others, white walls, old magazines, and that characteristic hospital smell that always made my stomach turn. 15 minutes of waiting seemed like an eternity when the nurse called my name. I almost gave up. Mr. Cooper? The deep, serene voice of Dr. Julian Jenkins filled the consultation room. I looked up from my cell phone and was met with a penetrating gaze that caught me off guard. Dark hair, slightly gray at the temples, a well-defined jaw, and a smile that seemed to hold secrets. Jake, I automatically corrected, trying to remain professional, as he walked over to examine my shoulder. His fingers were firm but gentle, sending goosebumps that had nothing to do with pain. Personal trainer. For how long? He asked, his eyes fixed on my expression as he manipulated the joint. 10 years, I replied, trying to ignore the proximity. But this is the first time something like this has happened? First time seeking medical help. You mean? He smiled, arching an eyebrow. There was something in his tone, somewhere between teasing and concern, that broke through my defenses. Touché, doctor, I admitted, involuntarily returning the smile. The consultation flowed with a mix of professionalism and inexplicable chemistry. Julian, as he insisted I call him, alternated between technical explanations of the injury and insightful observations about my evident reluctance to seek medical care. I left the clinic with a prescription for anti-inflammatories, specific exercises for rehabilitation, and a strange feeling in my chest. For the first time in months, my mind wasn't just focused on sets and reps. I was reliving every moment of those 30 minutes of consultation. Every smile contained, every look that lasted a second longer than it should have. And surprisingly, my shoulder didn't seem to hurt as much anymore. In the following days, I started going to the cafe in front of the clinic. I told myself it was because of the quality of the organic coffee. But I knew my eyes were looking for him through the glass windows. On the third morning, Julian appeared, his white coat exchanged for a blue shirt that highlighted his eyes. Following my doctor's recommendations to take breaks, he joked unceremoniously, sitting down at my desk. His black coffee contrasted with my elaborate cappuccino. Our conversations flowed naturally, from discussions about the benefits of exercise to debates about the best restaurants in the city. Julian had a unique way of transforming everyday subjects into fascinating stories. His hands gestured as he talked about his most interesting medical cases. And I found myself more focused on his movements than on his words. Meetings at the cafe turned into walks through Golden Gate Park. On a particularly pleasant afternoon, we sat on a bench watching the sunset. Julian shared his passion for photography, showing on his cell phone unique angles of the city that I had never noticed before. You see San Francisco in a different way, I commented, leaning in to get a better look at the photos. Our shoulders touching lightly. It's a matter of perspective, he replied, his gaze meeting mine. Sometimes we need to change our point of view to see the beauty in the most ordinary things. Those words echoed in my mind the entire way back. Our friendship grew with each meeting, built on small moments of complicity. It was comforting to have someone to share thoughts with without judgment, even as a part of me began to long for something more. The closer I felt to Julian, the more my old fears resurfaced. In Boston, I had learned the hard way how relationships can fall apart. With each message from him, my heart accelerated, but my fingers hesitated to respond. During our conversations, I noticed his long looks, the way his body leaned towards me. But when he mentioned a patient who admired him or talked about his busy social life, a pang of insecurity hit me. Was I interpreting everything wrong? Working at the gym became an even greater refuge. I increased my personal training hours, using physical exhaustion to silence my confusing thoughts. Some clients noticed my distraction, especially when my cell phone buzzed with messages from him. One night I canceled our coffee date with some excuse about a last-minute client. The truth was that I was afraid of giving in, of getting hurt again, of risking a friendship that was becoming so important. But mostly I was scared that Julian could see through all my barriers. The storm took San Francisco by surprise that night. I was closing the gym when Julian appeared, completely soaked. His eyes revealed a determination that made me freeze in place. You're avoiding me. Wasn't a question, and I need to know why. I tried to avoid it, busying myself with the equipment. It's late, Julian, and you're wet. Jake. His voice made me stop. Look at me. I turned around slowly. City lights streamed in through the windows, creating shadows on his face. Drops of rain were still running down his neck, and I had to fight the urge to wipe them away. What's going on? He approached. I thought we had something special developing here. My heart hammered against my chest. I can't, I whispered. Can't or don't want to? It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. His voice softened. Because for the past few months, every moment with you has been dangerous. I added, my voice cracking. It's been dangerous. Silence filled the space between us, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. Julian took another step towards me. In Boston, I began, the words escaping before I could stop them. I invested everything in someone, my time, my heart, my dreams, and when it was over, I realized I had lost myself in the process. And now you're afraid of getting lost again, he concluded softly. I nodded, unable to meet his gaze. Jake. He touched my chin gently, making me look at him. I'm not asking you to get lost. I'm asking you to let me find you. Something inside me broke with those words. All the barriers I had carefully constructed began to crumble. How do you do that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Do what? Make me want to risk it all again? He smiled, that smile that lit up his eyes. Maybe because some risks are worth it. In that moment, with the city shining through the windows and the rain creating a soft melody, I let my defenses fall. My hands found his face, and when our lips touched, it was like all the pieces fell into place. The kiss started soft, hesitant, like a question being asked. But when his arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer, hesitation gave way to certainty. His lips were soft against mine. His hands were firm on my back, and the world around him just disappeared. When we broke apart, panting, I saw in his eyes the same whirlwind of emotions I felt: fear, hope, desire, and something deeper, something that promised so much more than just a moment. Still scared? He asked, his forehead touching mine. Yes, I admitted, a smile forming on my lips. But for the first time in a long time, the fear is not stronger than the will to try. The walk to my apartment was a mix of nervous laughter and expectant looks. The rain had eased to a fine drizzle, creating an ethereal glow on the empty streets. Julian held my hand like it was something precious. His fingers intertwined with mine with a familiarity that made my heart race. As soon as the door closed behind us, the atmosphere changed. The air became thick with unspoken possibilities. Julian took off his wet coat, and I watched the water droplets slide down his neck, disappearing under his shirt. Your apartment suits you, he commented, his eyes scanning the minimalist space before returning to me. Organized, elegant, with some hidden surprises. What surprises? I asked. Approaching, he smiled. That smile that made my knees weak. Like that collection of poetry books I saw on the shelf. I didn't imagine you as a romantic. There are many things you still don't know about me, I replied, my voice huskier than I intended. I can't wait to discover each one of them, he murmured, closing the distance between us. This time when we kissed, there was no hesitation. His hand slid down my back, exploring every tense muscle, while mine were busy unbuttoning his shirt. Every touch was a discovery, every sigh a confession. Julian gently guided me to the couch, his lips trailing kisses down my neck. "You're even more beautiful like this," he whispered against my skin, sending goosebumps through my skin. "Like, how?" I managed to ask between sighs. "Vulnerable without all those barriers you usually maintain." His words hit me like a wave of heat. I pulled him in for another kiss, deep and urgent, wanting to show with actions what I couldn't express with words. Our breaths mingled, bodies moving in an instinctive dance of desire and discovery. The city lights gently streamed in through the window, creating shadows that danced across our exposed skin. Julian explored every inch of my body with a reverence that left me breathless. His touches were precise, alternating between gentleness and urgency, as if he was memorizing my every reaction. "Jake," he whispered my name like a prayer, his eyes meeting mine in a moment of crystal clarity. "You are incredible." Those simple words, spoken with such sincerity, broke the last resistance I held. I gave myself completely to the moment, to the pleasure, to the connection that was growing between us. Every touch, every kiss, every sigh brought us closer to ecstasy. When we finally climaxed, it was as if time had stopped for a moment. It was just the two of us, lost in each other, connected in a way that transcended the physical. Afterward, as we lay on the couch with his hands tracing lazy patterns on my back, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. The fear was still there somewhere, but now it seemed insignificant compared to the feeling of completeness that filled me. "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked softly. "How sometimes we need to lose ourselves to truly find ourselves." He smiled, kissing my forehead tenderly. "Then let's get lost together." The first rays of sunlight found our bodies intertwined on my bed, where we had migrated during the early hours of the morning. I watched Julian sleeping, his face serene, his disheveled hair falling over his forehead. The reality of what had happened was beginning to set in, bringing with it a mix of emotions. I got up silently and went to the kitchen to make coffee. The strong aroma soon filled the apartment, and a few minutes later I heard his footsteps approaching. He hugged me from behind, placing a soft kiss on my neck. "Good morning." His voice, still hoarse with sleep, made me smile. "I hope you're not regretting it." I turned to face him. "No," I answered truthfully, "but I'm scared." "I am too," he admitted, picking up one of the coffee cups. "But in a good way. Like when you're about to start an amazing adventure." We sat at the kitchen table, the comfortable silence occasionally broken by the clink of cups. The morning light painted everything with golden tones, giving the scene an almost surreal air. "How is this going to work?" I finally asked. "You are my doctor." Julian set down his cup. "We're your doctor. I'll transfer your case to my colleague, Dr. Martinez. She's excellent, especially with sports injuries." "And what will we tell people?" "The truth," he replied simply. "We met by chance. We got closer naturally, and decided to give what was growing between us a chance." His simplicity in dealing with the issues that tormented me was comforting. While I saw complications around every corner, he saw clear solutions. "Maya is going to be insufferable when she finds out she was right," I commented, remembering how my client had insisted that there was chemistry between us since the first consultation. Julian laughed. "Well, we should thank her. Then, if it weren't for her insistence on looking after me, we might never have met." It's strange, I reflected, how sometimes the best things in life begin with a moment of pain. He reached across the table, intertwining his fingers with mine. "Life has its ironies, but now we can turn that pain into something beautiful." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of deep conversations and intimate moments. I discovered that Julian loved jazz and hated olives. He learned about my passion for amateur photography and my dream of opening my own gym. Each new discovery was like unwrapping a precious gift. When we finally had to separate, he had a shift and I had customers waiting. There was a new lightness in my chest. Fear still existed, but now it shared space with something greater: hope. "Dinner tonight?" he asked at the door, adjusting his shirt from the day before. "My turn to choose the restaurant," I replied, pulling him in for one last kiss. I watched him walk down the street, an involuntary smile on my lips. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to control every aspect of my life. I was ready to let things go. to discover where this new journey would take me. Because sometimes the best chapters of our lives begin when we let go of fear and simply allow our hearts to guide us. 3 months passed like a sigh. Julian and I had developed a comfortable routine, alternating between our apartments, sharing meals, and discovering new corners of the city together. Each day brought a new discovery, a new reason to smile. One Sunday afternoon, as we were walking through the Presidio, Julian stopped abruptly. His face was serious, something unusual for him. "I need to tell you something," he said, guiding me to a bench overlooking the bay. My heart raced, years of insecurity preparing me for the worst. I received an offer to coordinate a new sports medicine center in Chicago. He continued, "It's an incredible opportunity, something I've been dreaming about for years." The world seemed to freeze for a moment. Chicago, thousands of miles from San Francisco, from me. When I managed to ask, my voice firmer than I expected. "When?" "In 2 months," he replied, his eyes fixed on mine. But before I gave any answer, "I needed to talk to you." "Why?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Because in these 3 months, you've become a fundamental part of my life, Jake. And the idea of taking this job without you just doesn't make sense." I felt tears forming in my eyes. "Are you asking me to come with you?" "I'm asking that we consider our future together." He took my hands. "Chicago has a growing fitness market. You could fulfill your dream of opening your own gym there. We could build something new together." The proposal hovered between us, full of possibilities and fears. I thought about my life in San Francisco, the customers who became friends, the familiarity of the steep streets and morning fog. What if it doesn't work? I voiced my biggest fear. What if we change our entire lives and it ends up not working? Julian smiled softly. "What if it does work? What if it's the best decision we've ever made?" I looked out over the bay, the calm waters reflecting the blue sky. San Francisco had been my refuge, the place where I rebuilt myself after Boston. But for the first time I realized that maybe I was ready for more than a getaway. "I need a few days," I finally said, "to think, to organize my ideas." "Of course," he agreed, kissing my hands. "Take as much time as you need." In the days that followed, I immersed myself in deep reflection. I talked to Maya, who reminded me how much more alive I seemed since Julian came into my life. I researched the fitness market in Chicago, discovering promising opportunities. A week later, while we were having dinner at our favorite cafe, I made my decision. "Yes," I said simply. Julian stopped with his fork halfway to his mouth. "Yes, yes, let's go to Chicago. Let's build something new together." The smile that lit up his face made my heart melt. In his eyes, I saw reflected all the love and hope he felt. "Are you sure?" he asked. Although his joy was evident. "Am I afraid?" "Yes, but I learned that some fears are signs that we are about to do something important." He smiled. "And I can't imagine anything more important than building a future with you." That night, as we planned our move, I realized that sometimes the end of a chapter is just the beginning of an even better story. San Francisco would always be special, the place where I learned to love again. But now it was time for a new adventure with someone who made every day feel like a promise of happiness. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to have access to more stories like this. The move to Chicago happened in early fall, when the leaves were beginning to turn golden. As we organized our new apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, I reflected on how life can completely change in just 1 year. From an injury that seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, a love story was born that taught me to trust again. Julian didn't just heal my shoulder, he helped me heal fears I didn't even know I still carried. Our new routine established itself naturally. While he coordinates the sports medicine center, I dedicate myself to realizing my dream. I found a promising space for my gym in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. And plans are starting to take shape. The nights are ours, filled with discovering the city, impromptu dinners, and conversations that seem to have no end. Sometimes, when I wake up before him and watch his serene sleeping face, I think about how close I came to letting fear stop me from experiencing it all. How many love stories don't happen because we choose to stay in our comfort zone? Love, I learned, isn't just about finding the right person, it's about being ready to take risks. To grow, to change, it's about choosing to face your fears every day alongside someone who makes the journey easier. For those of you reading this, perhaps hesitating about taking an important step in your life, Don't let the fear of getting hurt stop you from experiencing something extraordinary. The scars of the past don't have to define your future. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. That shoulder injury could have been just another setback in my life. Instead, it became the first chapter in a story that continues to unfold. More beautiful than I ever imagined possible. So the next time life throws an obstacle in your path, remember, sometimes our biggest challenges are just doors in disguise, ready to take us to extraordinary places. We just need to have the courage to turn the handle. Love is waiting. Are you ready to find it?